Mr. Newberry, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready with where I just went ahead and got it started on YouTube.
Okay.
Get rolling whenever we're ready.
All right. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, Mr. Newberry's done his duties and we're ready to go if you are.
All right. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the city's Development and Zoning Review Committee. The purpose of this meeting is to provide this party an opportunity to informally introduce the concept of a proposed development to certain key city decision makers and to allow them to ask questions and provide comments. No decisions or recommendations on the proposed development will be made by this committee. Any proposals for development you hear or see today are in a very early conceptual stage of planning without the city's departments of planning and public works having had the opportunity to review them. Accordingly, discussion of specific details of any proposed development at this time is premature as they are subject to change prior to the formal submission process. In light of the informal and preliminary nature of the presentation today, the public has been invited to attend via the Zoom webinar platform or streaming live on YouTube and learn about the concepts associated with this proposed development in your city, but public comment will not be offered at this time. Any person interested in commenting on the proposal discussed today is encouraged to contact their elected representatives and also take advantage of the numerous opportunities to speak before the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council when, if such occurs, the development is formally submitted for the city's consideration. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Mayor Boland. And Chair Beatty.
Here. All right. So does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Thank you.
My apology. I'm here. I was trying to find the button.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the committee, first of all, as always, thank you for taking time out of your day to participate. We do appreciate it very much, and I know that I speak for the petitioner and the petitioner's team for that time and the appreciation. I also want to thank Mr. Stock and the owner of the company for getting the material safety data sheets over to the city this afternoon. It was a quick request, so thank you very much for your responsiveness. It's much appreciated again by the committee. This particular meeting is the second of two that we've held on this site. The site is located again in the Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley. It is accessed off of North Etherton Road, and a landmark relative to the site would be Fix Supply Services and its composting facility. It is somewhat immediately south, but the westernmost portion of this site adjoins its easternmost portion. The second meeting was requested by the committee to allow for the applicant time to address several questions. One of the major questions related to how the facility would look from North Etherton Road and surrounding properties relative to the screening that was proposed. A rendering in this regard has been provided. There are also certain concerns about stormwater management and the runoff associated with a facility like this. And again, I will let the petitioner's representative, Mr. Stock, the engineer, respond to that. All in all, you've received the general information from the city, as well as the revised plan sheets, the material safety data sheets, as well as information from the owner of the company relative to his company, and then the concrete industry itself. So a lot of information for consideration. And if there are any questions relative to what the Department of Planning has provided, we'd certainly be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Stock, do you have any presentation or anything?
I do, Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity, committee members, Mayor, and
Councilperson Clark. If Travis, if you don't mind, I had submitted a couple additional drawings from our last meeting, and I'll ask Travis to share those with you. As Mr. Vunich indicated, there were some questions with regards to the screening, the buffering, the stormwater, somewhat of the operation. And so Patrick Obasui, Obax International, owner under contract of the 10 acres. He's desirous to put a mobile batch plant operation on the western 4 acres, as highlighted in yellow. There would be a drive that services in red from Etherton Road, and then the operation would be located in yellow. So one of the renderings in the view is from Etherton Road to where the wall, that's the beautiful view there. Thank you, Travis. So 930 feet is basically from Etherton Road to the eastern edge of this 4 acres. And then we have the 6 acres, which is shown here in the foreground. That would be future commercial development of some sort. As we presented, we indicated a 12-foot perimeter wall. These are 8-foot green giant evergreens located along the face of the wall. I had mentioned this block wall being utilized in the Chesterfield Valley, not in the city of Wildwood, but in the valley that both Wildwood and Chesterfield share, at the corner of Spirit of St. Louis Boulevard and Chesterfield Airport Road. So I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to see these block walls. They're in front of the Gateway Studios at that intersection. Since our meeting and our discussion, this is a rendering at 12 feet. We don't believe it needs to be 12 feet in height. We think that maybe what might be more appropriate is 8 or 10. But again, from the committee standpoint and ours, the details of a formal submission would follow if generally this seems to be acceptable to this committee. It doesn't need to be that tall to really buffer and screen what goes on within it. So this is that perspective that we mentioned. And again, it would be obscured with future development of the 6 acres. And you can kind of see the mulch piles a little bit to the east. And then if we go back to the plan view, so again, the yellow, and then what's just north of us is the Kurtz Nursery, which came before the city. And theirs is a combination of similarities to the FIC operation, but it'll be construction materials, rock, sand, and so forth. There was questions about the stormwater. And so we had submitted a narrative with regards to the operation of the ready mix trucks when they come in, how they're washed down. Everything's directed to concrete 4 bays. There's the bays. Those are the encatchment areas where all the materials are washed out of the truck, collected. The water's reutilized in the mix of the concrete, as well as the materials are reused. And so anything with the cement, ready mix, concrete is all self-contained. I understand that the other ready mix facility further to the south of us, there may be some issues with offsite stormwater or so forth, but we will have a comprehensive stormwater system in addition to this collecting the local water in the trucks, but all surface water would be routed to bioretention basins to remove any suspended solids, provide volume reducing components, and then conveyed in an open channel on our property, on our 6 acres, or on our 4 acres and our 6 acres, out to a master drainage channel, which runs along the west side of Etherton Road. So I think the information here relative to the stormwater, the information to the buffering was the additional things that we were asked. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stock. Are there questions from the committee? Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I just have 2 highly weighted criteria that I would use in my preliminary consideration of this concrete batching at this location. And as a former senior R&D chemist, I had a lot of experience with batching and usage and containment of many of similar materials and same materials as will be used there. But the 2 criteria that I really see that we need to look at is number 1, the environmental impacts like you talked about, and their derivatives for the surrounding area. concerning the air and the land and the water. And the second one is what the mayor brought up last time is the natural aesthetics. As far as aesthetics go, the mayor had mentioned that the 12-foot concrete wall, or if we went with an 8-foot or 10-foot concrete wall, didn't look natural compared to the fix and the Kurtz Nursery piles of natural materials. And this elevation that you showed of the 12-foot wall, it didn't show the like the height of the mobile batch equipment and the material hoppers or material silos or the trucks or the waste concrete work-off piles. Just not knowing how tall those are, it's hard to imagine that that is going to block all of that from view. But more important to me is the environmental impacts and the proximal location that it is to our sensitive land uses, such as the John Le Cave Park and the bikers and the pedestrians walking that trail very often. And, you know, that they'll be breathing the air that's coming to them from that location, as well as the river that's also proximal, and our water table is very high there. The operation has some similarities to Fix and to Kurtz Nursery, but it also has differences, and those differences are what concern me. One concern is the air, like I mentioned, and that would be from the yard dust and the road dust and fugitive and venturi dust from the prevailing winds that would come across and would take it out of the enclosed area, as well as the dust on the roads and on the trucks, etc. Another concern would be the land and the water and the materials that are used, the cement, the sand, the aggregate that causes dust particulate. And you sent the information sheets, which were sent in time for me to look up the material safety data sheets online. And they, you know, most of it looks okay, but some of it, of course, it's calcium carbonate and crystalline silica and different things that we sure don't want to be breathing or putting on our land or our water. And I understand that most of it, the majority of it's going to be contained, but there's always some that's going to leach out and seep out into the to the land that's in the area, and it can get into the water. Stormwater can carry it around. Air can carry it on air molecules can carry it around. Wind can carry it. The stormwater itself can carry it onto the river. When you wash off the trucks, I see that, you know, you've shown where you're going to wash them off, but it still can get into the surrounding land of that area where the concrete holds the truck when you wash it. As well, you know, roofs, the equipment, everything that's around there is going to have some of those dust particles on it. And we always know that there are spills that happen occasionally, and that would be the initial impact of a spill would be in the land as well. So even with, if you had world-class manufacturing, the WCM method of containing this, we're going to have some tainting of that land around the area, and that lasts for a long time. So I'm still on the negative side of this, and this isn't even to mention that the trucks would be limited in the direction they could go with their loads because of the limitations on Wild Horse Creek Road and on Censure for weight limits for trucks. But that's where I stand right now, and I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, and I think all of those can be addressed. Again, the stockpiling materials would be lower than what the stockpiling is of materials next to us. I mean, by no means are the aggregate going to be as high as the mulch piles. The plant itself has a vacuum system on it for dust particles. In order to mitigate any dust. Dust control will be used, water on the rock, the gravel within there, very similar to the way the other two operations are. Concrete, ready mix concrete gets placed on the ground. It's all our streets. So the product that comes out of here just goes around the corner and places it on the ground onto the streets. So concrete in itself and all the ingredients, most of them are natural resources. The cement, obviously it's a process that makes it. It's solely contained within an enclosure. It's in the silos. But the sand and the aggregate are no different than the sand and the aggregate on the properties to the north of us. And, we'll be obligated, not just with the city of Wildwood, but the Missouri Department of Natural Resources with their stormwater discharge permit, which will be a monitoring permit that has to have a reporting period, both to MDNR and MSD. So I think, I understand your concerns, but again, I look at the operations of natural materials that are happening around it, and we're really no different. The wall, if that's not the right thing, and what's better is maybe a berm on that east side, an earthen berm with landscaping to soften that approach, that might be something that, makes a little bit more sense. But there's still concrete inside to contain, as you saw, for the stormwater system and the separation. So, I heard you loud and clear, and I think we can deal with that as we get into the details, should this project be able to move forward.
Mayor Bullen?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say as well, I mean, I think to me that, and this was my concern, and really my only concern when we first met, and that has to do with how this thing's going to appear, to the travel, the people that are traveling on Etherton. And I would just ask that, whatever you can do to ameliorate that to its fullest would be, a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Councilman Brost?
Yeah, I guess I just, mine's more appearance. I think Teresa hit on all the other points, but, on one side, I guess the appearance from Etherton Road, I guess I'm maybe less concerned about than I am from the trail. But as I say that, this is the area within Wildwood that is zoned for, generically speaking, this type of an activity. So I'm, I think from an appearance standpoint, it sounds like Mr. Stock is saying there's some movement there. To get there from the environmental side, it's just really beyond me. And I think that's what, I'd have to defer to the department and, on those concerns. But I do try to look at each project and look at the positive. And it being set off the road and back by the trail, I think the Etherton Road side, I'm not as concerned as I am for the trail. I'm an active user of that trail. And obviously, it's not going to be positive, but I don't think that's a reason to vote against this. I think the bottom line to me comes down to are the points that Councilmember Clark raised and addressing those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Brost, may I? I'm sorry, Chairman Beatty.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Stock.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Councilman Brost, I think, Travis, do you mind sharing plan view again? Because we are buffered from the trail, and there may be some sight lines if you're on the trail, but for the most part, there's more than 300 feet of thick operation between the trail and our west operation. So we are more than a football field from the trail itself. And those stockpiles of mulch are much higher than what our facility. Yeah. So can you put the cursor on the trail? There you go. So we are fully screened. I don't know that that's the right term, screen, but that operation of the mulch is really 300 to 300. It may be as much as 400 feet from the trail to our point. So we're kind of isolated in there. I think the environmental, we will deal with those and the aesthetics. And again, this is regulated. St. Louis County, from the parts of air pollution, noise, all those things, those regulations come in that we'll need to comply with. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think Councilmember Bros makes a very good point relative to the fact that this area is zoned for, this largely this type of activity. And I think that his point relative to how that plays into the aesthetics of it, I think is a good one. And so to be a little more specific with my concern, I guess I had an assumption that may not be the case, and relative to this particular facility that would affect my view of how much should be done to shield things. And that is, I've seen a number of with all due respect to the cement aggregate industry, I've seen a number of these locally even that they don't tend to look, at least from a distance, like they're very well kept. And so I guess that's been the backdrop from which I've sort of been looking at this. Now, that said, to the extent that this particular proposal, includes a better kept facility that doesn't have such in my view, a negative look to it, then I think that would go a long way relative to having to spend any money on aesthetics. So I just wanted to make clear more specifically what my thoughts are relative to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Boland. Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Chair. I would be interested in hearing if I could from the department, maybe from Mr. Vunich on because he knows this area better than I do, and with the river so close and the park so close and people pedestrians on that trail so close to the just the land and the stormwater and everything involved. What are your views of that environmentally?
With the permission of the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Vunich.
Ms. Clark, I hold similar concerns relative to the dust particulates. I also am concerned about what happens with the mix and the slurry and the water runoff. I know that Mr. Stock has done a good job of trying to address that. And then also Mr. Stock just brought up another concern, the noise associated with it. So there's a number of things that the department will investigate if this proposal moves forward to try to address your concerns, Ms. Clark, as well as Mr. Brost and Mayor Boland's.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. While you were speaking, I was pulling up Google Earth just to see how close the other plan is to the trail, and the trail to its northwest corner is about 500 feet.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Mr. Stock.
Mm-hmm.
More on the aesthetic issue of the block wall, Mr. Stock. Can those be colorized? Can they be a darker color than, let's say, that gray or light gray?
I think they can be stained. Yep, the concrete can be stained.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And while I had Google up, can you pull up the plan sheet again, or maybe it's still up there and I just minimized it, but yeah, okay. Yeah, so for reference, the northwest corner of this is about 500. I'm showing 520 feet to the trail. So it would be an equivalent distance to the other plant. But that's all. I just wanted to make that point. Councilman Brost.
Yeah, I guess maybe as a follow-up to the mayor's comment, Mr. Vunich, would it be possible for someone from the department maybe to visit one of their other locations as to how it's kept and, provide some feedback? I think that would go a long way with, saying what we would all be expecting. So.
Certainly, Mr. Brost, with the permission of the owner, I believe there's a facility at Interstate 70 and West Florissant Avenue that's been referenced before. So certainly the department could go up there with permission, access the facility and take some photographs and then share those with the committee or eventually the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. We'd be glad to do it.
Yeah, and that we all will need to recognize it's a different area, but the overall, I don't want to say cleanliness, but orderly of the facility, I think would fall down to be maybe a habit. And if we're not within their normal operating type, situation, we're probably not going to change the way they operate. So that's one comment. I think that even when Fixed Supply expanded, I think there were several compliments to Mr. Fick that everyone enjoys how organized and clean he keeps the area. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Yeah, just one more question, going back to my concerns. The distance, you said that it looks like it's about 500 feet. Do we know what I know that concrete batching plants are regulated by EPA, but I don't know what the distance is from pedestrian area or a housing area, what the EPA regulations are. Not that, EPA has given me trouble in the past. I remember as a chemist, when they took my toluene away, I cried. But I just would be curious as to how close we can be to that according to EPA without it causing a problem.
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to do some research on that, Councilmember Clark. I mean, I believe we're well within, any EPA regulations. I mean, I would be shocked to find something, but we'll investigate that.
And Mr. Stock, we can help too.
Okay, thank you.
And another point is the prevailing winds are generally out of the southwest there. So it would be blowing from the trail towards the plant rather than vice versa, generally.
Yeah, and I think what's important, again, I know I said this the first time, but there is a mechanical dust collector that's part of the portable plant. That is part of the system.
Are there any other comments or concerns from the commission? All right, seeing none. Mr. Stock, I'd like to thank you for your time. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, motion by Mayor Boland. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Clark. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
and look forward to this at P&Z if it shows up.